Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to another installment of viewer submitted invasions. First up is Bendy Straw. Now this is Bendy Straw's soul level 92 build. A couple quick thoughts. First of all, I know because I have a soul level 92 build, my Ashen Nun is 92. The problem here is that you run the risk of invading meta builds at soul level 92. If you were at soul level 90, you would not. Something to think about. If you find that you're invading a lot of meta players, and you can always tell by the number of souls you're getting when you kill them, you might think about leveling this guy up a bit more. Otherwise, you're just kind of giving away 30 free levels. Another thing I noticed is that you've got tons of vitality on this build, and you're wasting a lot of it. That could be because you're not actually equipping Havel's Ring +3. Without it, you're at around 67% equip load, which I think is quite a bit more reasonable. I also wonder about the poise. I think it's around 42 without the Wolf Ring +3. I'm not sure which poise breakpoints you're trying to hit, and regrettably, I could not find the poise breakpoints by weapon class online. I found the really old and outdated one, so if anyone has a link to a modern poise guide, I'd love to see it, so please throw a comment down below the video. I think too, if I were going to reallocate some of these stats, I would think about allocating away from vitality and maybe a bit more into dexterity. I think Gale's is a bit of a quality weapon. You could probably be getting more damage out of this build. Again, I'm not a build craft master, so I'll leave it to others to figure out like what the optimal stat allocation would be. But those are just a couple of build related thoughts that I had when I looked at this. So I think especially invading in the Ring City, the whole problem of the SL92 invading up to meta, the risk here is especially acute. I would also advise, like in a situation like this where you have not yet laid eyes upon the host, you're near the bonfire, the probability that the host is hiding somewhere is really high. I would have just been really wary of locking onto him, and I too would have been fooled by that kind of like otherworld holograph of another player right near the bonfire. It confuses me frequently. And here you're going to run into one of the shortcomings, I think, of the build, which is you don't have a good offhand option, either a straight sword that you soft swap to, or if you're really good at hard swapping, that you hard swap to, or better yet, like a hand axe or a rapier S-stock. This is a strength build, so you're probably looking at a hand axe, but it will let you put people away much more quickly. Now the Cestus is a good choice too, but the Cestus really shines when people are contesting, when people are trying to get away from you and they're in pure defensive mode and all they want to do is heal. The short reach of the Cestus, I think, is a big shortcoming of the weapon. I see you attempted to go for quite a few roll back stabs. There was another good one. The first time you did not unlock, and I think you recognized your mistake, and then you started unlocking for subsequent attempts, which I think is smart. Unlocking is hugely helpful. I'm sure you already know, but I'm saying it as much for other players. Make sure you unlock for those. And I like the decision to go after the blue there, even though it meant that you were going to trade with the white. I think that was absolutely the right thing to do there. So you probably already know this, but that corridor can be especially nasty because the PvE can block you in, and I have died on more than one occasion there to PvE blocking me into the gank, which is always really scary. Nice roll backstab there. I like how you made the little adjustment of your character's position. I really like the Undead Hunter charm there. The problem you've got right here, though, is because you don't have a good offhand choice. Anybody can reaction roll, even a one-handed greatsword, and so it's really hard to pressure somebody when they're low of health. And obviously you've got the host who's between you and the Phantom, which makes it even more difficult. But even if you hadn't had that, you probably wouldn't have been able to apply sufficient pressure to the Phantom to put him away. So definitely think hard about some sort of offhand weapon, or like maybe a katana that you can soft swap to, just for those sorts of pressure situations when you just need like one or two more hits on the host or the Phantom. Nice roll backstab there. You gotta, and I'm not saying again this for you because you already seem to be aware, but that weapon art, you cannot roll through it, but you can easily go around somebody as you did for a backstab, so that's always something good to look out for. Something else to think about when you're fighting against somebody like this, like the Phantom. I think that's the Cathedral Knight Ultra Great Sword. You probably, like, a greatsword is probably not the best choice, just because you're obviously going to get outpoised as it is. So the greatsword, even though it does good damage, and that was a very well read and well spaced R2 there, but you're going to lose poise trades anyway. So why not go for something faster, curved sword or a straight sword, something like that. I know one of my shortcomings as a player, and that was a nice parry. One of my shortcomings is not adapting sufficiently quickly to my opponents, and that was just an awesome ending to that invasion. Very nice job. So our next submission is from a player by the name of Vagos or Vagos. I'm not sure how you pronounce your name. It's a really short clip, but he actually provided me with some commentary around a set of invasions, and it was awesome. Like, there was so much knowledge contained within that commentary. I came away really impressed, and so Vagos, I would really recommend that you put some commentary videos up on your channel, just because they were, the commentary you offered, I thought, was really insightful. Not too much to say about the build here. In fact, the video clip itself is pretty quick, but there's something that happens that's kind of interesting that I wanted to talk about. I'll let other people comment on the build choice here. I think you described the invasion or the character as edgy, and it made me laugh because it was like the very first thing that I saw. This is like looks like a peeve build with a bunch of bleed and poison tools. I do like poison even at higher levels. I think it can be a good choice, especially to start off an invasion. And especially when you see here that the host isn't going to contest, I think buffing up is a really smart thing to do. And already the host is in a considerable amount of trouble. Now you've got him poisoned, so you switch over to the curved greatsword. But see, right here, I would not have attacked. I would have just gotten his face, two-handed the greatsword, and not even swung at him, because his life's ticking away, and that poison's gonna kill him if he doesn't do anything about it. And so if you just stayed on him, you could have punished his Estus with 2 R1s, which is gonna do more damage to him than a single Estus will restore in health. And so he's essentially completely screwed. The only way out of that situation for him would have been to have attacked you, which he wasn't going to do. So when you got somebody like that, their health's ticking away, they're low at health, don't attack, just get in their face and kind of dare them to make a move. But very nicely done. You ran him down really well with the curved greatsword. So the next submission is from MikhailSkylark. Mikhail sent in a really interesting setup here. He only carries around 2 regular healing Estus. He carries around 5 Ashen Estus during his invasions. You can see there in the notes. And he uses a lot of passive regen and healing, faith miracles to heal, which I think can be a very sort of efficient way to go about doing it, albeit not as fast. And obviously, if you're in a pressure situation, you're pretty much totally screwed. Couple things though. You've got 40 faith, so I'm not sure why you're using replenishment. I think Bountiful Light would have probably been a much better choice. I would also think about using the Filianor Chime weapon art. I'm not sure. I don't think I saw you do that. And I would also probably, instead of Heal Aid, I would have probably used Heal or Medium Heal with like the St. Tree Bellvine. That goes off pretty quickly. Now, of course, not as fast as Heal Aid, but Heal Aid gives you so little healing, and it, frankly, at these levels, it's almost laughably little. Like, Heal Aid is worth it, at really low soul levels, but I think at these levels, I probably would be less likely to rely on it. And here, I think you're falling prey to a common problem, which is, you're panic rolling because you're being pursued by so many enemies. And I certainly understand the impulse, and of course I do it myself, but I thought maybe there's a little bit less pressure. You could have gotten away without actually panic rolling. I love the spam there, because you're conditioning your opponents. Nobody expects that from an invader. You took them completely by surprise, and so now that's going to force them to think about not trying to contest right after you throw out 2 R1s against a gank in particular. I think that's a really, really solid idea, because I really did like that. I also like the rope fire bombs. That's a fantastic strategy against a gank that's pursuing you. And here you see the Heal Aid. which does, I guess, give you a good amount of healing. But again, I probably still would have preferred medium heal. I think you're doing a good job of not like contesting too much, getting your attacks in while you can, and then moving out. And incidentally, I think all throughout this invasion, like your ability to kind of weave between the members of the party with your rolls and not get hit was really impressive to me. Like, you do it so many times. You'll see all throughout this invasion the way that Mikhail's able to just kind of weave his way through, which again, I just thought was really cool. And there, I think the charged attack was kind of a good idea, but the tracking on one-handed greatswords isn't anywhere near as good as it is on two-handed. Two-handed greatsword tracking R2s are pretty much perfect, but one-handed obviously suffers. So if in the future, if you're going to do that, I'd definitely recommend going two-handed. And here, while you're in this room, I would keep the cat ring on. You end up playing around it here, and I think you did a really good job. But there's just so many times where you could get killed in here if you're not able to roll off the edge. So just something to think about. And I like the healing here too, because it baits the host into some good aggression to come after you. And we'll see again later where that happens as well. I think it was a wise decision not to go after the host there. That green blossom I thought was maybe a bit poorly timed. You almost got backstabbed. I think this is PS4. If this had been PC, you probably would have gotten backstabbed. You know, against players with great shields, you might have tried like a guard break weapon art, just because they get so accustomed to just standing and hiding behind that shield. They get really complacent. And not to suggest that it necessarily would have worked, but it probably would have been worth an attempt. There's some more of that spamming. You can see they get so used to invaders only swinging twice that the second that second swing came out, the curved greatsword user was straight into his attack animation. These gankers are able to get away with so much poor play. Well, I call it poor play. Poor play for what a normal, like you would think of as PvP, but I guess in a gank it's not poor play, it's smart play. Nice way to get out of there. Good camera control to keep an eye on them and make sure you weren't going to get plunged. And here I think your lack of healing is really paying off. I might have tried to draw the host in even further. He just couldn't resist coming after you when he thought he had you. Doesn't work out too well for the host, though. He just got a little too bloodthirsty, and I'm sure anyone who's an invader can relate to that. Nice job, man. Well played. So I frequently get submissions from folks that I think, while they're so good, I really don't have much to add to the gameplay. I don't have many recommendations to make. And then I thought it would be fun to take one that's really good and just talk about the things the player does really well. And this player, of course, here is JeeNiNe. Thank you to JeeNiNe for sharing these clips with me. If you're not already watching JeeNiNe and you invade in this game, you really need to change that. Stop by one of his invasion streams. It's really amazing to watch him work. He pulls out victories in situations where I wouldn't think anyone else could do it, and his win rate, even at Pontiff and Ring City at Meta, is impressive. I mean, I'll see him go hours and not lose an invasion. Truly something for the rest of us to aspire to. I think one of the things that he does really well and very interesting, that's maybe a bit different than from what a lot of like top tier duelists do, is he hard swaps, and he hard swaps right in people's faces. And when he uses something like Lido's or Gundir's or the Dragon Slayer Great Axe, and he swaps right in your face, and he uses the weapon arts on these weapons, it's very, very difficult to react to. And I know I've had the pleasure of fighting him in duels a few times, and he's hard swapped in my face, and fortunately I was looking for it, so I don't think he caught me out. But you can see that if you didn't know who he was, you could be in some serious trouble up against him. And obviously this is a strength build, which gives access to those weapons with those really nasty weapon arts, and they just do tons of damage. And we'll see here, in fact, obviously starting off with CoreVien, I'm not really sure what his reasoning is for doing that. I'm sure he had one. But watch his roll discipline here. I think it's really impressive. He's got the whole party at his back. Most of us would probably start panic rolling there when we couldn't see the party. Nope, he stays calm, very disciplined. Perfect rolling attack there to interrupt that Sunbro. Gets around the corner for the heal. Knows the host is going to follow him in there. Look at that damage, man. Holy cow. And of course, these guys are gankers, so that they're constantly contesting because they get away with it. They're able to just contest nonstop. The cat ring swap in mid-air is unreal. I don't know how many players are actually capable of doing that. I think, there's quite a few that can do it. I'm certainly not one of them. I mean, the amount of damage that he was able to pump out against this party in that short amount of time. Another Sunbro dead. I think that's 3 players that he killed already. And there's another aspect of his gameplay here that I really enjoy. It's his patience. So he's killed 3 of the 4 party members. The host is undoubtedly sprinting for the bonfire at this moment to resummon. But JeeNiNe doesn't let impatience get the better of him. He takes his time, he resets his tears, takes his green blossoms. And there, I don't know if you noticed, but the host had just kind of stuck his head around the corner, which is kind of interesting. It makes him somewhat of an anomaly. And maybe the one mistake JeeNiNe made here was not reading that to know that the host was actually going to set up an ambush for him, and then that's why the host hadn't run back. And unfortunately gets caught mid-swap with his FAP ring, keeps his cool, doesn't start panic rolling, and is able to make the swap. And I think there he was going for a pivot. And there he knows that even if the host goes from his running R1 into a standing R1, that there's nothing that he can do because JeeNiNe will get into his hyper armor frames on the weapon art before he's able to connect, and because it's a great hammer, he will win that poise trade. He does a good job of adapting his play style to that of his opponents. Like, he would have never done something like that in a duel, but he knows it's appropriate in an invasion, so he reads his opponents and he knows the context. This was interesting. This is kind of like, I think, an invasion. This is kind of midstream that he shared. I think he said he cut out the beginning of it just because it was kind of boring. But if you enjoy these kinds of invasions from him, like, look at that hard swap right in the host's face. And when you see it from JeeNiNe's perspective and you see the swap, it doesn't look as impressive, but trust me, when all of a sudden he's standing like 3 feet in front of you and Lido's is suddenly in his hand and he's entering the weapon art, it's really scary. And if you're a good player and you see that, it's going to make you appropriately wary of him, and you're going to want to stay back, and it's going to cut down on the aggression. Now, these guys are all just mindless gankers, so they don't know how to cut back on their aggression. You see, they're all just going to come piling in with their high damage weapon arts and just swinging away. Such efficient ring swapping too. Silly Dog is actually another one who does that really well. Mr. Silly Dog, if you don't watch his streams, definitely recommend checking in. He is probably the most active ring swapper I know of. Look at that pivot. That was so perfectly done. Like, I don't think I would have gone for that because I personally would not have had enough time to get to that Phantom's back. But JeeNiNe executed that perfectly. Thanks for editing this, JeeNiNe. So obviously trying to indicate the passage of time here. And he goes for Fume here, and I presume that's because Fume has a really good plunging attack, better than the others. Oh man, I didn't even realize he was out of Estus at this point. Oh man, narrowly got away with that one. We're going to see another example of JeeNiNe getting good reads. Spaces out that attack and throws out that third R1, which obviously the host was not expecting. He was so conditioned to only expect 2 R1s that he started swinging immediately as soon as the second R1 ended. Something to keep in mind, guys. Definitely think about spamming. Sometimes it can be a really effective strategy. Okay, this is the last clip from JeeNiNe. He does something here that legitimately makes me laugh. I expect that, well, probably nobody's seen this trick in so long that there's a lot of players that started after this trick was popular. The untrue white ring trick. Used to see this a lot in like the first 6 months the game came out, and then I think he kind of fell out of favor because pretty much everyone knew to look for it. But here I think nobody's used to it. That is so awesome. You obviously have to be careful if you go for that. And there's that hard swap again. He's so effective with that. And obviously he's got great hammer poise, so like there's nothing that's going to interrupt him. And that weapon art can be difficult to roll. I mean, even if you're looking for it, if you're up in too close, it's really hard to avoid. And even if you successfully reaction roll the first half, you can get caught out by the second half. Brilliantly done. Nice job, JeeNiNe. Thanks so much for sharing these, and thanks to everybody who sent clips in. I really appreciate it. Take care, everyone.